Right, good morning, everyone. Lovely to have everybody here this morning. I think there's about 15 of us in the room, which is actually a bit more than I was expecting. So I'm glad that some of you shared with others the link for this webinar to talk about the latest grant from Solihull Active Minds. So what we'll do this morning, first of all, a couple of house rules. If we can stay muted during the course of the couple of presentations, you'll see questions will be answered at the end unless, Sadie, you want to do things differently. And as you can see, this event is being recorded, so feel free to turn your camera off if you prefer. But at the same time, if you're happy to share, we're always happy to see everybody's faces and network. Just so you know as well, you should all have received, if you registered on Eventbrite, a pack for this grant, and the slides that you will see today will be shared with you after the event. So there should be a couple of us here today from CAVA. My colleague Oli has been delayed. My name is Alid Beaublin, and I'm delivery manager for Solihull and for Stratford in CAVA, and Oli is acting as our funding and group development officer. Then Sadie Walker will take over after a short presentation from CAVA and share much more about this funding. So CAVA, for those of you who don't know, we are present in Solihull and in Warwickshire, and we support the whole of the voluntary organizations infrastructure in those two boroughs and counties. We support organizations on the volunteering side, but also in terms of growing your organizations. We support funding, we support volunteering. Our presence in each area, some of you are not actually from Solihull who have joined today, is usually made of a volunteering coordinator and a funding and group development officer. And for Solihull, we also have a relationship officer, June, who supports extensively the sponsorship from larger organizations towards your organization in the VCSE. So what we actually do concretely is helping on the volunteering side, your organization find the volunteers or the trustees that you might need, or committee members, or potentially directors. And we also help individuals find the type of volunteering that suits their needs and their aspirations within your organizations and wider. On the group development side, we do more than signpost organizations to funding. We also help organizations identify whether there is a good legal structure for them when they're growing, or if they would prefer to collaborate with existing organizations and focus on their delivery. There's a lot of benefits in collaborations across the county and across the borough, rather than sometimes having a potentially heavy legal structure to manage on your own or with your committee member. We will also help in terms of governance, in terms of understanding responsibilities as owner of a charity or a limited company, a CIC, or a smaller organization. And once you have shared your projects with us, we can help you look for the right funding for your projects. We can't write funding applications for you. However, we can review your applications once you have done a detailed draft of your applications. It's worth remembering as well that we have a lot of online resources, especially for people thinking of growing their community initiatives. I would really encourage you to have a look at what is on the CAVA website prior to contacting us, so that you have a better idea of potentially where you want to take your initiatives. And also during the life of your organization, we have a lot of information on governance, on trustees' responsibilities, directors' responsibilities, and the legal framework around policies and procedures and wider. CAVA is a charity with membership. It is completely free to join CAVA as a member, and it brings a range of benefits. So as a reminder, we are your voice with Solihull Council, with larger organizations, with local authorities in terms of representing what matters to you, representing the challenges you may have, and being a member allows you to contribute more extensively to the surveys that we do. And we also offer some additional services once you are a member, discounted rates for a range of legal matters to a large extent, which you can discover after this session. So that is it in terms of CAVA. So Sadie, I'm going to hand this over to you, unless anyone has any burning questions right now. There's a lot of comments in the chat. No, it doesn't look like questions. So Jordan, if you're happy to share your screen, then I'll let Sadie continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Aileen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sadie. I won't go through my job title because that's all in the chat. We're going to be doing a mixed delivery, so you're not going to hear one of us all the time. So I'm going to do a bit of the presentation. We've got Jordan from Think Active, who sits on the delivery group for SAM, who will also be doing some of the presentation, and Gemma from Coalbridge Trust, who also sits on the delivery group. So mine is really short. Next slide. So welcome to Solihull Active Minds. So the aims for today, we're just going to give you a very, very brief background of what SAM is. Then we're going to go through the background of system solutions, go through the process, how you apply and where to access more information, inform you of how we're going to be reviewing the process, and then questions at the end. What I will say is, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, rather than stopping the flow of the presenter, if we could pop in the chat, and then throughout we'll just pause and go through some of those questions and answer them that way, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, lovely. So I will pass you over to Jordan. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sadie. So just as a quick reintroduction, so my name is John Young, Partnership Manager for Think Active. We're an active partnership who work across Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire. And my role specifically is to look at Solihull. So kind of looking forward to connecting with different people on the call and after the call as well. So in terms of what is Solihull Active Minds or SAM, and I'll probably just use SAM moving forward. So it's a community wellness program, kind of on the back of the Commonwealth Games, as funding for some legacy work. And in Solihull, you know, we pitched that we would basically help people with poor mental health to be more active, and ultimately drive a system change that meant that mental health and physical activity were massively integrated. I think we're making some cool strides with that moving forward. In terms of who's involved, who has been involved, in terms of the steering group, there's a number of organisations. I think that's all on there. So Live and Well, Solihull Active, Solihull Council, Coalbridge Trust, ourselves, Think Active, Sport England with the funding, and additionally kind of externally evaluated by Sheffield Hallam University as well, and they're evaluating all of the legacy programs that have come out of Commonwealth Games across the West Midlands. And I guess next step is for everybody, you know, all the local organisations to get involved. I guess what are we trying to achieve? What is SAM trying to achieve? I think there's some key bits on here. Is to pick out a couple. For me, is that first of all, like, improve knowledge of where to take part in physical activity and sport, and also, I guess, knowledge of what physical activity can look like. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the traditional sports clubs. There's a number of different organisations who offer physical activity, and for us to just putting that on people's radar, connecting that in with the mental health pathways, and vice versa, connecting physical activity back into mental health, connecting mental health into physical activity. We want to kind of encourage people to be more active in a variety of ways, so such as sustainable active travel, cleaning up the environment, but also people using those places and spaces. That Solihull is a real cool space for this. There's lots of cool parks, cycle paths, you know, lots of different ways that people can get out and be active, and I guess that contributes into having that pride of the local space and the local community within which we live. And I think the bottom two are key for me in terms of generating kind of new local partnerships between organisations. There's an awful lot of good organisations across Solihull, and if we can bring them together, we're only going to strengthen the offer for our community. And within which, if we can use SAM to kind of, I guess there are values and ways of working, and I guess approaches to work that the SAM program is working to, that if people can kind of work with that within the system, but play their role within the system, then we get recognition of kind of the values that we think make, you know, are going to contribute to some meaningful work going forward. And finally, for me, the vision of SAM, and I've touched on this already, and I'll probably jump around a little bit, so apologies, but I think the top paragraph kind of really sums it up. So kind of firstly, if we're able to connect our partners, and by partners we mean everybody, we can kind of develop and begin to understand each other, build on the strengths that everybody can provide, and that everybody has. Ultimately, because the system, and by the system we mean all of us, want to improve the health and well-being of residents of Solihull. So kind of, and that's a virtuous cycle really. So if we can continue to want to improve the health of residents, we continue to connect with each other and continue to understand each other, start to really drive that long-term change. And the guiding principles, now, like I said, these will mean different things to different people, but for us as Sam isn't there to be an authoritative, you must do this, you must, do X, Y, Z to be part of this. It's a kind of a way of working, and a way of bringing people together, which hopefully actually becomes a generational change, because people are more deliberately working in partnership. The aim is to not be judgmental. Everybody's in a different position as an organisation, as an individual, and if we all strive for the same thing, it will help us, again, ultimately create a sustainable solution, that we're not trying to judge people and make people feel bad for what they're doing, or that someone's better than somebody else's. We're all working to the same goal here, which is, ultimately a project for healthy, happy residents, and it's about movement, not sport. So just move more. Like, moving a little bit is good, moving even more is even better. And for that, I think that allows us to give hope, and it does allow it to be 100% accessible to everybody. There's not as part of SAM, we must deliver a certain activity. It's, as part of SAM, if you can buy into and say that these principles and this way of working aligns with what you do, then we're onto a winner. So that's it from me. I think you're going to hear from me a little bit later again, but I will hand over as we look at what that system solution support is.
Hi everyone, so I'm Jo Ashington. I'm the Community Projects Manager for Coalbridge Trust. I've been on the SAM programme team since the kind of original inception of the project. I'm just going to talk through the small grants programme which we've created as part of SAM. So as a programme team, we've recognised that there's real power in enabling communities to be responsible for their own health and well-being, and the health and well-being of their community, their neighbours, their friends. And we looked as a partnership alongside the NHS at some of the barriers that prevent people from accessing support around their mental health. And that can be around the stigma, it can be around long waiting lists. People just don't want to build up the courage to go and get support and then sit on a waiting list for 6 to 12 months to speak to a specialist. And there's some reluctance to access services as well. So the SAM systems solution process refers to a small grant process that we've created, which seeks to challenge traditional funding and application methods, and provide more accessible process for people that will allow both individuals and organisations to apply for funding. Maybe where they've previously been unable to acquire it, where they've attempted to acquire funding, but actually the applications have been really long-winded and that's put people off, or they've seemed really complicated, and the same organisations who have got a history of being able to make grant applications just keep applying for the same sort of funding. So the SAM process, sorry Sadie, next slide, sets out to create a less bureaucratic process that encourages more people to apply. Like I said, create opportunities for people that are not eligible for other funding, and it can be the catalyst for new innovative projects. Sorry Sadie, are you able to move the slide on? Oh, Jordan, sorry.
Jordan, yeah.
Sorry,
No
Jordan. Sorry everyone. Yeah, so they can be the catalyst for new innovative projects, because hopefully by reaching more people, we'll have a new group of people that try and access funding, and they'll have some really creative and imaginative ideas to get people involved. It reduces the risk for applicants and funders because it allows for a test and learn approach. So as you can see from the grant pack that Sadie shared with you earlier, individuals can apply for up to £100 and constituted groups can apply for up to £1,000. And it allows people to actually just test out their ideas and just say, like, will this work? You know, do I want to commit to a really lengthy application process for something that I haven't actually already tried out, or I haven't tried out with a particular cohort or in a particular kind of iteration of what people's ideas are. So it also encourages distributed leadership. So Coalbridge have successfully delivered some seed funding projects in the past, where we empowered the community to take responsibility for their own health and wellbeing activities. And what that did was it gave a real sense of kind of empowerment for those groups, who then went on to seek continuation funding from other organisations. So it really helps to build a system where people feel able to go on and create sustainable projects. Next slide, please, Jordan. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, everyone. As I said, the grants are open to individuals, constituted and non-constituted groups, because we are trying to make it more accessible to people. The applications are less detailed, and although there is some monitoring required, it is less sort of intense than other grant funding requirements. Applicants will also get ongoing support through the application process. So from the very beginning, if they, you know, individuals or groups need support, they can access support before they even make their application. They can access support once they've made their application to either resubmit if they're unsuccessful, or if they're successful and actually their project really takes off and they need to access continuation funding, they'll be supported to access that support as well. And there are multiple application methods, which I'll talk about shortly. Next slide, please, Jordan. So what will happen is people can submit their applications through a number of channels. That application will then be reviewed against a set of criteria, which is quite vague, really. There's lots of opportunities for people to apply. Like I said, it's not meant to be really application heavy with lots of paperwork, lots of questions. If the application meets the criteria, then the application is then sent to a community panel. So that's a panel made up of people that live and work within Solihull, and they will make the decision around the application. So they'll consider the merits of the application. There needs to be a physical health or mental health element to the project. If they don't meet the criteria, then the application will be returned with that opportunity to have support from the community development team to develop the application, answer some questions that maybe the panel needed to know in order to grant the application, or it might be that actually the idea just isn't something that would ever sit right with the panel. So we can work with those individuals and organisations to look at alternative options. The community panel, once they've made their decision, will notify Coalbridge, and we will then issue the grant to the applicant, letting the applicant know, obviously, if they're unsuccessful, what the next step is, how to appeal, and then if they're successful, they will be given the award with information around how to submit their monitoring and evaluation information to us. Next slide, please, Jordan. So as I said, the community panel is made up of our local community. So what we've tried to do is create a panel that engages people that aren't already really vocal in our community. So people that maybe have got lived experience of mental health, lived experience of maybe trying to access support and then finding it's not quite the right support that they need in order to live with their poor mental health. And we think that was really important as part of this project, because it's those people that will be able to go back to, as a panel, and say whether people's bids will really work for people like them. So they will be crucial in deciding who is issued the grant funding as part of SAM. And if there's anybody on the call that is working with any people within the borough that you think would like to sit on this panel, then if you just contact Sadie or the community development team, they can go through that process with people. And we've had quite an interest in terms of the community panel, because obviously people find that a barrier for accessing mental health support is that they think that people that are making the decisions around their mental health are quite disengaged or sit in an office and don't really know what's going on the ground. So we hope that by having a panel that have got lived experience, that are experiencing the same issues as people that would be accessing the projects that will be issued grant funding, that hopefully then we'll have a lot more sort of involvement from individuals and people within the community. Next slide, please. So, excuse me, the application methods, as I've said, should be really straightforward. They shouldn't take much longer than about 10 minutes to complete. And anybody that has any additional needs or needs support in terms of submitting their application can access that support through the community development team. So your grant pack outlines all of this information. There's an option to send a paper form, which you can send to Coalbridge directly. There's an online form, which you do need a Microsoft account to access the online form, or you can just email your application directly to the email address listed. If sort of filling out application forms and things aren't really kind of what you're about, or you'll find that too complicated, then you can send a video or voice recording, as long as it covers off all of the content that we require in order to process your application. Then we will accept a video or voice recording. And the information for the community development team, Sadie has shared within the chat, and it's also listed on your grant pack information. Do people want me to go through the whole slide, or are people just happy sort of just within the grant pack to see what information is contained? I'm mindful that I've talked quite a bit, and I don't know if people want me to sort of go through every bullet point on there. Is there any preference? I'll just do a bit of both. So as you can see, there's some key information that we require from applicants, whether they're an individual, a non-constituted or a constituted group. So there's a set of generic questions that you'd expect to find on any application, which is required for sort of the governance and due diligence of the applications. So just contact details. A brief overview of the project. So we just want to know what you want to do and who do you want to do it for and why do you want to do it. People can include a bit of rationale. It might be, you know, I went to a group and I found that, you know, my child has a particular need and it's not catered for within the existing groups and I'd like to start my own. It might be we already run a group, but actually we're struggling with equipment. So it's just a very brief overview of kind of the purpose of the grant. And then we ask around safeguarding and mental health procedures or qualifications. That's because what underpins the whole of the SAM project is how physical health can be used as a catalyst to improve people's mental health. So we're hoping as part of the application we can recognise or sort of seek out new people that may be interested in delivering mental health support to their peers. So by asking people if they're interested in obtaining a mental health first aid qualification, we might have people that A, should have it because of the nature of what they're asking to deliver, but also so maybe really good person to have in the community with that qualification. And the more people that have access to first aid qualifications for mental health, the more access points there are for people to access that support. So it might be that if through this project a volunteer undertakes a mental health first aid qualification, a barrier for them previously, you know, a person might have been going to a group, disclosed mental health needs and then been signposted somewhere else. Whereas through this project, we might be able to identify somebody within that organisation or that community group that actually can do some of that triaging for people. So again, it's creating more access points for people to support around their mental health. Thanks, Jordan. So the example projects are contained on page 6 of the grant pack, which you've been sent. I'll just read one of the examples, which is a parent and toddler group a parent and toddler group that walk every week need some equipment to help them walk in all weather conditions. So they would submit an application for items such as wellies, umbrellas, push-chair covers, high-vis vests, sort of practical items that would enable them to go out in the poor weather, because obviously exercise and physical health, people want to do it in all weathers. The weather shouldn't be a barrier. So that group then would be linked into Walk Solihull, which is a project through Solihull Active. I've got so many Solihull Actives in my mind, sorry Sadie. So Solihull Active, they'll be supported with walking routes, training support and other opportunities. They'd also be linked to the council parenting team so that they could increase exposure and encourage more parents to access that walking group. So it acts as a bit of a domino effect. So the core group seek the funding, their group is enhanced by all the wraparound support that they get from council services. That then is filtered out to maybe community groups and the parenting team, and then more people join that group, and maybe people that wouldn't join the group before because they couldn't afford to buy wellies for their children can now access them through the group. So there should be like a bit of a domino effect that by the more that we build those groups up, the more people might access the support, and then there might be breakaway groups from that. That's me done. Thank you.
Thanks, Gemma. Thanks, Gemma. So just, I've only got a couple more slides to hear from me before I hand back over to Sadie. I guess this is whenever there's funding about, people might want to know about the monitoring evaluation side of it. And as we said, as Gemma's talked about, it's designed to be a simple process, kind of also reflective of the application process. Well, first of all, successful applicants to the funding will receive the SAM branding to use and demonstrate your commitment to the programme. So this will also give you access to the regular Solihull Active Minds newsletter to get you up to date with the wider programme, and also that kind of allows you to connect wider with other partners and see what else is happening as part of the programme. All the different logo files and whatever else will come with accompanying guidance about where can't go, clearance around the stuff, but like I said, it's not designed to be particularly intensive, but equally I think there's a I guess a desire that people do, you know, reflect with pride that they're part of the program, and equally as more organizations use the branding, more people become aware of what SAM is, and that helps drive conversation and just grow awareness of the work that we're all trying to do in this space. What's required from a monitoring evaluation perspective. So I guess we're asking for successful applicants to capture how they've spent the money, but use the following methods. So kind of capturing images of the new equipment and images of sessions taking place. So kind of just visually representing what's happening and telling the story that way. A short clip, so kind of 20-second clips of that equipment or whatever you've applied for funding for being used, and of the participants or the activity itself actually taking place. And then if as an application form, if there was mental health training as part of the application or any other courses or qualifications that are relevant to help you continue to deliver, having evidence of those as well, again, just helps us continue to tell the story. And I think that's a really important part of this is that we're trying to tell the story about the impact that SAM is having and that this funding will have. So we'll also be asking for 3 quotes or more from participants linked to what the funding was used for, and if you like, almost framing that around kind of what difference has the funding made to them personally. So what have they seen through the impact of that funding and how that has made a significant difference for them. Equally, it's really important for us to get some feedback from the applicants, from you guys, on the process of the funding. So, like, what was that funding, the application process like? What was the support like through that process and post that process, and equally the element on the receiving funds as well. So that kind of holistic feedback around kind of how our system solution, how that's helped you, and then how the funding has helped you, your group, and I guess the beneficiaries are the people you're working with. So yeah, hopefully that's pretty straightforward. But I'll hand over to Sadie now for the last couple of slides.
Thanks, Jordan. You can go on to the next slide. Thank you. So just to wrap up some of what's been said, so you'll get a bit of a flavour that we're trying to administer grants in a different way and make them more accessible, inclusive and open to all. So part of it being a new process for the delivery group means that we will be reviewing it quite regularly. So you'll see here we'll have monthly meetings with the various organisations involved, including the community panel, taking on board some of that feedback that Jordan's just mentioned from the monitoring and evaluation. So things may change quite quickly as we work through this process, or they might not. And I think so what I just wanted to reiterate to the group is, whilst this is the process for now, depending on what feedback we have, positive or negative, in terms of how we can improve it, we may change the process, but that will be quite fluid. So we're hoping, unless we're inundated with thousands of applications, that we won't close the application deadline until all the money's gone. So it will be a rolling application process, but just be mindful that we may change things as we go, for the better though, might I add, and not to make it more difficult for everyone to apply for those funds. And I think that is about everything. So there hasn't been any questions that have come up. Jordan, would you mind to stop presenting so that we can see everyone back on the screen? So you do have, obviously there's myself, Jordan and Gemma from the SAM delivery group, but there are a couple of others on the call. I thought I saw Vicky on the call. Ben is from the community development team, who will be part of this process as well. Joe Luxmore-Brown is also joining the delivery group. So there's a number of us on the call for anyone who has any questions at this stage. Judy?
Morning, everyone. Yeah, you might know I've got loads of questions because I've been talking to people about it over the last couple of weeks. So will you forgive me? And this is just because we've been helping a couple of people already, a couple of groups already. So I've just got a bit of a list of questions. One was from Alan Crawford, who says the online form still isn't working, but Sadie, you put a note in saying something's happened. So
yeah,
is that very recent? Because the online form wasn't working up till now. So
yes.
Hopefully, so do you want to do a little play today? See if we can get it to work.
Yes, please. Thanks, Judy. And if it doesn't, we'll have to look at a different online form. But it should be working. Okay, we'll have a little go later on, because he just messaged me about 10 minutes ago saying, tell him it still doesn't work. So, it's better that we get it right, obviously. So one was, is it one application per group for one activity, or have you got any sort of guidelines about numbers of applications people might make? Another, do you want me to keep just asking the questions, or? Well, we'll feed, if it's okay, Judy, we'll feed back as we go so that everyone can hear, if that's all right. So yeah. Jordan, Vicky, do jump in if I'm not saying the right thing. No, it's not one application per activity or organisation. I think we're open to, I mean, clearly, if one organisation that's delivering one activity per week puts in 10 applications, we might just question that. But there might be a good need in the project description of why that's needed. So we're very much trying to go on need rather than putting in parameters that stop the need from being asked. Does that help answer that question, Judy?
I think what it indicates is you're flexible and fluid, and that's a really good sign that you want to have a test it out. One was, it says somewhere in the guidelines that you can't pay for staff costs. But if you've got somebody, if you've got a group, just trying to think, say our walking ladies wanted to do a Zumba class, we'd have to pay somebody somewhere to deliver a session with them. So when you say no staff costs, do you really mean the facilitating costs won't be paid, but the actual sessional costs for somebody to be the expert might be?
So again, oh, Gemma, were you going to come in? Do you want to come in?
No, sorry, I was just going to answer about the previous question, just in terms of the number of applications. When we're reviewing them, Judy, if we start to see lots of applications from the same group, then that would sort of trigger the wider support to see whether that we should be signposting for larger grant programmes through like maybe Think Active or Carver. Yeah. So it's kind of a rolling review that, because we've got a group where potentially all 10 ladies might apply to do like a different session within a session. And then we might go, well, actually, if this is, you know, a really sustainable project, then it needs to be moved on to more sustainable continuation funding.
Yeah. But it's not a hard and fast one. You a bit like Waterall, it's one a year, and you just think, oh bugger it, I've already made an application and I could have done with something else. So so it's not that hard and fast, but I understand what you're saying about that.
Okay, and then coming back, thanks Gemma, coming back to your staffing cost, Judy, we've been around the houses on this one, if I'm honest, as a delivery group, and at the moment the stance continues to be no staffing costs, and that's more around, we're wanting to see, so one, a lot of costs for instructors can be sourced from elsewhere, whereas things for all the other stuff tend to be a little bit more difficult. And also there was around the sustainability of a project, if we just fund staffing costs for a short amount of time, where that sustainability then goes. Now that's not to say that we wouldn't look at that in the future, because we are flexible, and if a lot of the feedback is there's limited funding out there to cover some of these staffing costs, and there's a sustainable way that we can look at once this funding's finished, that it will continue. I think we want to move away from what some of the traditional funding is of you throw some money at stuff for staff costs, and then when the funding goes, the activity stops because there's no funding for that member of staff. So the way around that is there might be qualifications that we can look at, so training people to take those sessions, but not at the minute we're covering staff costs. And again, I don't know, Gemma or Jordan, if you want to add to that.
No, I was going to say the same. What we were hoping for is that if you've got a group of ladies that want to do Zumba, that hopefully one of them would say, I'll do the course and I'll deliver the Zumba. So the community members are being upskilled as part of the project. So it might be, I think, you might need to say, well, to get the group up and running, we need a Zumba instructor for 6 weeks. But during that 6 weeks, somebody else will undertake the training to take that group over in the long term. Because it's not, because you could just apply for grant funding to lots of other funders for sessional costs. So it's how that might overlap to enable a member of the community to be empowered to continue running that group.
I think that's something you'll have to review, because it takes a hell of a long time to train to be any of those session leaders. If, you know, as a swimming teacher, the qualification to be even just a basic level 1, or if not level 2, is £1,000 for both, and about a year's worth. So I think that's something that you're going to have to review. But, you know, I'll leave it out there for you to because it sounds like it's something you would think about. And then my last one is a really random one. and that is facilities that need maintenance, that it should be maintained by the council. It'd be really good if there was a piece of work, and Andy Hunter will know what I'm talking about, where you could understand if a football pitch or a play pitch was going to be mowed, whether you could have an understanding of what the maintenance programs, or even play areas or basketball courts or whatever, are going to be repaired, maintained, managed, and if a piece of work could be understanding where you want to have some of these activities, how well or otherwise they're going to be maintained. So that, you know, for example, we're trying to do park play to try and get some of that new initiative, but we have to find a different venue, because the venue we would have suggested that's safe, accessible, etc., is just not being maintained or managed. So I wouldn't think there'd be safe play, but that's for maybe a bit further down the project, understanding resources and venues and how they're being managed and maintained.
That's I know it sounds a bit off piece, but it's a really good point, Judy, and I'm already having a conversation with public realm colleagues around playing pitches, because we've just had a winter sports assessment done and they're of poor quality.
Correct. And you can't get any information or even anybody to answer.
So I'm having a conversation with them in a couple of weeks with the FA as well, because the FA have got some possible funding that clubs can apply for as well to help with that. But we'll take that offline if that's all right, Judy, and I'll keep you. I mean, you're working with Liz in my team on park play, aren't you? So
yeah, I mean, but I just think it's something like pools. You know, accessing pools are very expensive. Tennis courts are not being maintained. Basketball courts. And I don't think it's something this project can necessarily address, but it's something to think about in terms of safe access to physical activity. You know, no worry. Okay. And I'll shut up now, because as usual,
thanks, Judy. No, not to worry. I hope we answered all the questions in some form or another. Nabila, I think you had your hand up next. Hello.
Hello, hi guys. Lovely to see the team. Lovely to see this work progressing. It's really fantastic. I just have a very quick question, and you may have answered it. I may have just got fog while it was going on. Sorry about that. Gemma, you mentioned that those who awarded funding would have regular monthly meetings. I just want to know what they would entail, because I think for small grants, a regular monthly meeting with an awardee is sometimes a lot for them if they have not got that structure in place. If they're a new organisation, or if they're an organisation that's got limited resources, that a monthly get together for them with the council for a small grant is sometimes quite a bit.
Sorry if I've misunderstood. I don't think it's the small grants applicants that are having the monthly meetings, Nabila. That's with the fund, with Coalbridge and Sadie, just to review the grants and just make sure that system is operating effectively.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I think
there's no expectation for the groups to meet monthly.
Yeah,
they'll just become part of kind of a wider network, so there'll be information sharing, but there isn't that monthly expectation for feedback.
There's not a monthly monitoring expectation if it's a small grant. There's not too much.
It's end of programme.
All right, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Nabila. Are there any other questions?
I think Elaine had a hand up, but then she
did. It then went. It
yes, I took it down. I think we potentially have spoken about the core cost and the funding of the providers of the services enough. Personally, I think, and what we can see with funders, we are not seeing enough support for core costs. So if staff aren't paid to deliver those, I suspect, especially people who are not in constituted groups, will really struggle to fill in this application and to make an offering. So I would really encourage you to rethink that.
Thanks, Aileen. Okay, I think that's everything from us. I don't know.
Sadie, if you're funding an individual, you're just assuming that they've got a bank account themselves that you can pay into. And would you be paying in advance of the activity taking place or after the activity is taking place?
Ideally in advance. So I suppose it depends on the timing of when the application's submitted to when they want to do the delivery. So if they don't give us enough time to do the process review of put it through the community panel and get a decision out, I mean, we are looking to do that a quite quick turnaround. So as Gemma alluded to, as an application comes in, so once a week Coalbridge will send those applications to the community panel, and then unless there's a reason for the community panel to come together to discuss, if they're all in agreement with a decision, that decision can be made almost instantly. So it should be a very quick turnaround unless there's a reason. The community panel will be meeting on a monthly basis for those applications where they're obviously not in agreement of whether to award or not. So it gives that chance to have that open discussion amongst the community panel, which you don't get via email. You can miss that, can't you? So I suppose, so what I'm saying is, yes, it should go to them before the activity, but if you put in an application to start the activity in 2 weeks' time, then that could be problematic. Does that answer your question, Judy?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of them theory and reality things, isn't it, really? So
it is. And, you know, we might find that we're able to, the process, we might be able to turn it around with, you know, within 7 days.
Yeah.
But also we might go, oh, that's totally unrealistic. It's going to be more like 14 days. So until we're in it and we're turning them around, it's difficult to say. But what we don't want this to be is where individuals or organisations are waiting for weeks for a decision. We want it to be a quick turnaround.
And the mental health first aid qualification, Gemma, have you got a provider that's going to deliver that for you? And what does it look like? Is it an online thing? Is it a face-to-face? Is it several sessions? Have you sussed it out yet, or is that on your wish list to do?
Do you want me to go and come in?
Yeah, if you want, Sadie. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we do have, and this is through Joe, who's on the call, who's pulled this together. So there is what will go out with an award, so if you've been given the funding, is a list of all the mental health qualifications that are accessible. So that goes from kind of universal services, so a level 1, all the way up to like a practitioner, which we're not expecting, can I just add. But what it does do, it gives individuals and organisations, and it's almost like a shopping list of which qualification you would like, because some of them will be online, some of them will be face-to-face. So what we'll do is give you the money to do the qualification, and then you choose which qualification it is that you'd like to do.
Separate from the funding award?
Separate, well, it maybe we need to make that available actually then, so that you can see how much each of those qualifications are, so then you know how much to apply for. So that's a good point. So it will be part of the funding award. If you're wanting to upskill, that will be part of the funding award in terms of mental health. So I'll circulate that round actually and make sure that's on our website and on the form. That's a good question, Judy. Because what we do recognise is some people might just, they're volunteers or whoever's delivering the activity, it might just be a mental health awareness session, which is online for 2 hours, whereas others might want to go into, as you've mentioned, mental health first aid, and there are other courses dependent on what the organisation or the individual are wanting to gain from it.
Yeah, like as an example, we've got like a women's empowerment group that are kind of hosted by Coalbridge, but they run kind of independently to us, and they offer peer support to people that have got lived experience of domestic abuse or poor mental health. So ideally within that group, they should all have a really basic awareness of mental health, because they're all giving that advice to each other, and then the group lead would maybe go to the higher level qualification because she's facilitating the group, but not everybody within that group would need that you know, like a level 3, but it would be beneficial for everyone within the group to have a real foundational level, because you know, they're sharing that information kind of with their lived experience as if they're mental health first aid trained.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like there are any other questions. So do I pass back to you, Aileen?
Yes, you can pass back to me. Thank you very much to all the participants. And what I would say is to remind everyone that as long as you have a constitution as a constituted group, we can help at CAVA to review applications as well. So of course, there is a CDT to support, especially if you're an individual in the community with a bright idea. And just remember, we're here, can help with your governance, with setting up your policies or reviewing them to take into consideration some of the comments that were made today. And I think, as Sadie said, if there are no other questions, thank you very much for coming today. This will be available online. We will also be sending you these presentations, and I think you've all had the pack before the meeting. If any of you are attending without having registered on Eventbrite, you will need to email me to get the pack because I will not have your email. So yes, just remember to do that. And everyone have a lovely day, enjoy the sunshine, and we'll see you soon again. Bye for now.